It felt different. It was a gravesite.
I'd never seen anything like it.
Investigators don't know who she is.
He killed once. Is he going to kill again?
That's a violent struggle. It was ugly. It was awful.
Possibilities were endless on how she died.
Look at my hand. How'd I get blood on my hands?
The hunt is exciting.
Police!
We're working against time. We have 2 victims. There might be a 3rd.
The Pacific Northwest. Rugged, mysterious, and remote. It's called Wonderland. But this paradise can be a hunting ground, a graveyard, and the perfect place for murder.
I'm usually called to a crime scene when something extremely unusual has happened. I'm looking for things that might tie into the story that I've been told. Washington Park is an urban park, but there's an extensive amount of trails, very dense and pretty remote. So there's a lot of places where you could end up dumping a body.
What have we got? Something I've never seen before.
When I saw that young woman, it kind of took my breath away. It was just such a contradiction to the beauty of the environment.
Who discovered her? The park ranger behind me.
This was something that you could tell they've never seen anything like this. It can be pretty traumatizing.
The bottom half of her, her legs, her feet, her torso, her pelvis, those were pristine. But she was completely decomposing from the rib cage up. So we had exposed ribs, we had her organs that had been decomposing as well. She did have on a sweatshirt, but from the shoulders up, she was completely skeletonized. No skin on her face, no eyes, no ears left, only her hair was there. I'd never seen anything like it.
This part of the park is a big homeless hangout, isn't it?
She's not one of them.
It seemed that this was not a person that had been living outdoors. This victim had skin that was clean. It was unblemished. It didn't have bug bites or scratches.
Any ID?
No.
She was naked from the waist down. Immediately, as seasoned investigators, I thought, this girl's been sexually assaulted.
We only get one shot at the evidence on this young lady, and we need to be as thorough as possible.
Give me a couple days.
Molly is a no-nonsense kind of investigator. She tells it like it is. She lets you know exactly what she needs from you. We knew we had to perform what we call the full Molly. Everything we can analyze, we will. We're going to put 110% into this case in order to come to a successful resolution, because that's what Molly Dahl asks for.
Detective, when do you want to issue a statement?
Let's wait until after the autopsy.
Okay.
We've had a rich history in the Northwest of well-known serial killers. We have a body in this park. It's the beginning of summer. We knew this was going to be a big deal. We really had to start making sure people understood they were safe.
She was left like someone just pulling the garbage out. I've come across victims before where I can't determine their identity initially, but they have a face. I didn't have a face, and all I could think of is that your family doesn't know where you are right now, and it's heartbreaking.
Detective Molly Dahl starts her search for a killer. And at the Oregon State Crime Lab, Dr. Nikki Vance tries to identify this murder victim.
When I'm analyzing a body, I'll talk to them quite often. To me, that seems natural because they used to be someone. To try and give them a voice, for me, is paramount. I'm not desensitized to these cases. I tend to take it personally.
I know that if Dr. Vance is on the case, she's going to give us as much as she can from what the body tells her.
So I look at this young person on the autopsy table and I think, who in the world could this be? And how in the world are we going to find who did this to you?
Detective Dahl checks in with missing persons, but knows it's a long shot at best.
This case had so little evidence. I didn't know what she looked like, so that made it extremely hard to even narrow down your search parameters as a missing person or as a possible runaway.
She had to try to reach out throughout Portland, throughout Oregon, throughout the country to find out who this is.
But one clue lies in plain sight.
We found blowfly larvae inside of her that hadn't matured yet.
Flies will be drawn to a wound. So we can look at the generations that have been on that body to try and draw an estimate of the time since that person's been dead. We were able to narrow it down between 7 days to about a week and a half.
Can you finally give me an age? 15 to 17, most likely?
We did not see any trauma. She was not shot, she was not stabbed, she was not hit over the head with a rock. In this case, we were not able to determine an actual cause of death. So really the only conclusion that we could draw is that she was perhaps strangled.
Our DNA sample is solid. Great.
We were banking on some kind of DNA coming back from our autopsy.
Now it's a waiting game. But with so little to go on, police have more questions than answers.
The possibilities were endless of the scenarios on how she died.
I can just tell you the victim's been there for a few days, but like I say, there's an investigation underway, and we really need to get more information before we go public. I want to assure you that the party...
Did she die by one hand? Was she lured up there by a couple? You cannot rule out anything at this juncture.
Detective Dahl gets some devastating news. There's no DNA match to their killer.
We had to come right back down to ground zero. Not only did I still not know who my victim was, I had a suspect and I had no idea who he was.
Molly doesn't stop at a junction like that, and neither do I. We knew this was a contemporary teenager with long black hair, and she was probably Hispanic. So we employed a forensic sketch artist. I'll have the cranium ready for her, and she takes digital pictures of it to create these types of drawings.
When we got the sketch, it breathed life into her. She became more real. We put out a press release and crossed our fingers and were hoping that someone possibly knew about the victim.
Just a few minutes ago, police released this sketch of the woman whose body was found in Washington Park back on June 26th. Investigators don't know who she is, but they do think she was murdered.
When you go into an investigation, you're just checking boxes. Well, I need to do this. I need to move on to that. I need to check these resources. But it was killing me that I could not figure out who this young woman was.
In the investigative process, Molly and I are always in touch.
Something tells me that whoever it was that killed her isn't done.
That thought is another little piece of terror for me.
Despite all the media attention the murder's gotten, nobody in Portland's come forward with any information, and the clock is ticking. It's now July 3rd.
I don't really have time to talk about this right now, right?
Barely 1 week after the body was discovered in Washington Park.
The horror of this crime and the innocence of the victim left our city reeling.
Come on, use that, Mocha.
And as day turns to night, Portland will soon awaken to the terrifying possibility a serial killer has just turned Wonderland into their hunting ground. It's July 10th, 2012. Portland is gripped by heat and the suspicion that this city could have another serial killer in its midst. Detective Molly Dahl is investigating another murder, her second in less than 2 weeks. This time, the victim is 32-year-old Michela Powell, who lived in the city's trendy Belmont neighborhood.
When we responded to Michela Powell's apartment, it was apparent that she'd been in that apartment for a while. There's a distinct smell of decomposition. I have a very low tolerance for bad smells. The visuals, I can handle. They're easy.
When we investigate these homicides, we investigate it as a team. Molly was brought into this as a support detective because she adds that expertise.
Expertise the lead detective in this homicide case, Christina Coffey, will quickly come to rely on.
I arrived on scene and there was, some sort of liquid that was coming from the bottom of the mattress, and there was a deceased body on a loft-style bed.
Rich, we gotta get this body down.
So we eventually had to remove the mattress off of the loft-style bed and place that onto the floor. Her body was very bloated and discolored, and just from Nikki's face and looking at her Oregon driver's license, it did not appear to be the same person.
Michela Powell. Is that really you?
Detective Coffey has gone through this many times before, and getting there and seeing this decomposed body isn't something unusual to her.
She had her pants removed, she had been strangled, and all of this happened in approximately 18 inches. That's a violent struggle up on that top of that bed. It was ugly. It was awful.
This reminds me of your Washington Park homicide.
Detective Coffey said that she thought this was my case.
2 women, neither found with their pants on.
Molly and I looked at each other, just kind of raised our eyebrows like, this is odd.
Odd that both victims would be left in a similar manner, but still not enough to link the murder of the mystery girl found in the park to the killing of Michela Powell, at least not yet.
The crime scenes were so different. One was outdoors, one was indoors. At that juncture, just because we knew so little about how my Jane Doe died, it would have been a stretch for us to associate Nikki Powell's death with Jane Doe.
At that point, I interviewed the maintenance person.
I know you already told one of the uniformed officers, but can you take me back to what happened yesterday and today as well?
He told me that on July 9th, he received a complaint from some of the neighbors that they had smelled an awful scent coming from her room.
When she didn't come to the door, I just used the key and went in. Hello? Miss Powell? I didn't see her. Kayla? And I called her name, of course. And then that's when I seen the litter box was overflowing. So that's where the smell was coming from, right? Because she has a dog and a cat, and she takes pretty good care of them. I figured she just forgot, so I left. Then I came back this morning, and the smell was worse, so that's when I was opening the windows. And then that's when I see her on the bed. So I called 911.
And you only saw Miss Powell when you came back a second time, this morning?
Yeah.
And you're sure the door was locked, windows closed, yesterday when you came in?
100%.
He was very distraught with what he had seen, and we did believe his story.
I appreciate you talking to me today. I know this is a tough time.
Detective Coffey then must tell Michela's father his daughter is gone.
We deliver the worst news that you can to any parent. It's heartbreaking, and you can see the pain that the parents are experiencing. It's hard. It's really hard.
Do you remember the last time you saw Michela?
I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago maybe. She seemed good, happy, you know. She was getting ready to start a new job. She had this wonderful spirit to her.
When you saw her, did she mention anyone she was seeing?
No. It was all borrowed time in some way.
How's that?
She needed surgery but wouldn't have it. Michela had a small hole in her heart.
He was upset, but he was also very logical. He told us that Nikki had a dog and she had a vehicle. He wanted to give us as much information as he could supply.
Did you know Michela Powell? She lives upstairs?
No.
Thanks.
Police canvass the apartment building, looking for anything that will point them to a possible suspect.
There was this guy that was staying with Michela, I think. I saw him a few times, but he kept to himself. 40s, maybe, kind of chunky, glasses.
Any idea what his name was?
Benjamin, maybe?
From talking to various neighbors, more than one wanted to name Michela's roommate as Benjamin.
Thank you. We may be in touch.
We know that her wallet is missing with her ATM card, and we know her dog is missing, and we know her vehicle's missing.
Could Michela's killer also have taken her pet?
I don't think in my 30-something years of law enforcement have I ever seen somebody take a dog in the course of a homicide.
The only thing that I can surmise from that is that our bad guy had developed some kind of relationship with Nikki's dog while he lived there.
Detectives immediately put out an APB for Michela's stolen Subaru, hoping someone's seen it or spotted her dog. They also focus on where and when her ATM card has been used.
We contact the bank, and we're able to look at all of the transactions that have transpired from July 3rd, when we know Nikki was alive.
Because we had an outstanding suspect and a car and a dog, there were a lot of leads to follow up on. So we have to set aside our other cases that we're working.
And we're able to see a trail of what the person who took her card and presumably murdered her, where he's gone and what he's done.
Let's throw the name Benjamin in our database with the same physical characteristics that people were describing to us. We landed on a couple Benjamins that had been arrested. They're on probation, and we focused in on this Benjamin. So we created some photo lineups.
Which of these men do you remember as Benjamin?
That one.
With Michela's possible killer coming into focus, Dr. Nikki Vance determines how this young woman was murdered.
Michela Powell had been dead for probably a week. However, her body did give us a lot of investigative tools at the autopsy. She had been strangled, and not manually, not with hands, but with a shoelace. She had evidence on her body, on the external and internal portions of her that showed that she was sexually assaulted.
Whoever killed Michela also raped her. We'll enter the DNA into CODIS.
These two cases that had happened within weeks of each other immediately drew a red flag for me. So we have to think, are these two cases related?
If the DNA found on Michela matches the DNA on the young woman in Washington Park, it'll prove their killer is the same man.
Molly and I come from two different worlds, but we had to work together, and we're working against time. Because if we have two victims, who knows, there might be a third.
In an area known as Wonderland, Portland authorities think there's a connection between two brutal murders committed just 1 week apart. Homicide detective Molly Dahl is trying to solve both killings. Desperate for any new leads, she returns to the scene of the first murder.
I went back again just on my own. We get to the guts of a case, and it's the worst feeling in the world to not have a suspect in your sights after you've been devoting so many hours to an investigation. So it's quite a burden. I would stop and think about this case and think, what am I missing? Maybe there's something that we could find. You know, a piece of identification that I missed. It just bothered me. It kept me awake at night that I could not figure out who she was.
So many unanswered questions, including why the body was skeletonized only from the waist up. Investigators would never find an answer to that mystery.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Returning to the crime scene also means tracking down members of the homeless community who might have been in that area at the time of the murder.
It's going out and finding people and making them feel comfortable.
How long have you been in Washington Park?
A couple of months.
Getting people to open up to you and wanting to help you, even though you are the man.
I was just wondering if you'd heard something, maybe somebody bragging about raping and killing a teenage girl. It would have been about the end of June.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Nothing was leading me to who Jane Doe was. And I didn't want this to go down the road, months, years, that I couldn't say that I turned over every stone.
The investigation into Michela Powell's murder is also hitting a few roadblocks. Detectives have ID'd a possible suspect named Benjamin and believe he's using Michela's stolen ATM card.
The last time that he had used her ATM card was in Redding, California. We attempted to retrieve the video surveillance, but there was not any video at that point.
So they have no idea if Benjamin's their guy, and nothing else is panning out either.
We had local police looking for the dog and her car, and they were unable to locate it.
Our last phone ping was the 10th, and there's no money left to draw on in her ATM.
Given the fact that these cards hadn't been used for a week, we had to think, is he going to be coming back to Portland?
No one to talk to, no money to stay on the run. Maybe he's coming home.
And if he was, we had to be ready.
Thinking their suspect has come back, police close in on Benjamin's Portland home.
We had to be well prepared. He killed once, is he going to kill again?
Police department, open the door. Police department. Police! Kitchen! Clear! All clear!
He was not home. The neighbors had not seen him for several weeks.
Come take a look at this.
We were able to contact his probation officer, who said he had reported to the office in person on July 9th.
And when the ATM footage finally arrives from Redding, California,
That's not our guy.
it's not a match.
So he's not Benjamin. Who is he?
So we knew that Benjamin was not the suspect in our case.
Juggling both investigations,
Excuse me. Detective Dahl.
Detective Molly Dahl gets an unexpected call about her young victim from Washington Park.
Detective, what can I do for you?
This detective from Clark County, Washington, recalled taking a runaway report. So when he saw our flyer and our facial reconstruction sketch, that's what spurred his memory.
This is her. Her name is Myra Cruz Rodriguez.
How young?
15.
When I saw the first picture of her, I did get really emotional. Just a beautiful young woman.
The detective from Clark County is going to reach out to her family for her dental records. She's a runaway from Vancouver who's heading back down to San Diego.
One down, one to go, right?
It's a face with a name. It's a face with a story, and it's a face with a family.
It was so validating to me because my job is to find out who this person is. First and foremost, and finally, I had a name.
One part of this double mystery is solved, but investigators still don't know who killed Myra Cruz or Michela Powell until a new lead suddenly changes everything.
Hey, Molly.
In the murder of Michela Powell, detectives are at a standstill. until they get a surprise email from Michela's family.
Molly. Come here. Michela worked at a homeless shelter.
Michela volunteered at Operation Night Watch with people who were at the shelter.
Let's go check it out.
Yeah, let's go.
We contacted the executive director of Operation Night Watch in downtown Portland.
When we went to Night Watch, they quickly identified the people that Nikki spent a large amount of time with. Even though we have a large transient community that frequents these providers, they have the same rituals, they go at the same time.
Yeah, she was an animal lover. I remember that. I used to have dogs, 4 of them, English bulldogs. Anyway, when she was working here, she made sure we didn't go hungry. That's not always the case with some of these volunteers.
Did Michela get close to anyone here that you can remember?
No, not that I can remember. You know, actually, I take that back. She did talk to this one guy, Mark Bebout.
Hi.
Hi.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Thank you for lunch.
You're welcome.
He's a real friendly guy. He would always say he's just between jobs and that he could help us all find something. I don't know, he asked me it was all just an act.
And Michela befriended him?
Well, you're not supposed to befriend anybody here. I mean, outside of these walls, but yeah, my guess is Bebout probably charmed her.
So do you have a dog?
Yeah. Mocha. A mutt. A lovable, untrainable mutt.
No dog's untrainable. I used to work in a kennel. Maybe I could take a shot.
Most people that knew Mark Bebout described him as being very kind, very helpful.
I could sense right away when you started working there. You were different. You really care about us.
He wasn't like a typical person that had been living on the streets for a long time.
Do you know where we can find Mark Bebout now?
No, I haven't seen him in weeks. Actually, he and Michela disappeared around the same time.
And when was that?
I'm not sure exactly. Maybe late June?
This may be a long shot, but do you remember this young woman possibly passing through here? Sometime in late June, before you saw Bebout for the last time.
Hey, Jay, take a look at this. Do you remember this girl passing through here?
Oh, yeah. Didn't she have like a skull or something on her shirt?
Yeah, on her sweatshirt, that's right.
They gave a great description, down to sweatshirt that she was found in.
Yeah, I don't think she was homeless, though. She was mostly frightened, kind of out of her element. She was trying to get a bus ticket to, where was it, L.A., maybe San Diego?
Bebout took a real liking to her. I think helped her out.
You look lost.
Mark Bebout?
She okay?
No, she was murdered a couple weeks ago in Washington Park.
Oh, jeez.
Little did we know that we would finally find the nexus between Myra and Nikki and how Bebout came to brush up against Myra Cruz.
It's the hit that ties everything together.
Thanks for letting me crash here for a few days.
It's no big deal.
Mark Bebout moved into Michela Powell's apartment right after he had killed Myra Cruz.
I can just tell you the victim's been there for a few days, but like I said...
As soon as we kind of sewed up that Mark Bebout had been the roommate of Nikki Powell, that's when the intensive background work starts to come into play.
You telling me it's a coincidence he went back to Redding of all places?
Detectives close in on Bebout. They already know the last time he used Michela's ATM card was in Redding, California, but have no idea where he is now.
He could be going after someone.
We learned that he was a registered sex offender from Redding. So it wasn't a big assumption to think that was he on some kind of hell-bent journey and was he going to do some more horrible deeds? He's already murdered 2 women.
Detectives quickly learn Bebout's previous victim is safe, and he's on the move again.
The hunt is exciting because you know that they're trying to get away.
We're looking for this person who has had a 7-day lead on us, trying to find him.
Bebout used his food stamp card in Warrenton yesterday.
Where's the connection there?
I don't know, but I'm gonna find out.
So in my mind, he was going after anybody who had done him wrong.
Picking up Bebout's trail in the small coastal town of Warrenton, Oregon makes sense. Detectives discover he once lived there with his girlfriend Amy, a girlfriend he physically assaulted.
We attempted to contact the victim in that case to check her welfare.
Christina, have you reached Amy yet?
No, it went straight to voicemail. I'm gonna try again.
Okay.
He knows he's going to be wanted for 2 murders. And we were very afraid that some harm had maybe come to Amy.
Portland police believe they finally have a suspect in the murders of 2 young women. Has Mark Bebout now set his sights on a 3rd victim? His ex-girlfriend?
Hello?
Is this Amy?
Yes, it is.
Hi, this is Christina Coffey with the Portland Police Bureau. Are you still living in Warrenton?
No, I moved out of Warrenton a while ago.
Good.
I contacted Amy. I actually asked her about Mark Bebout. I was afraid he was going to come after her.
What?
And I scared her by asking, by even saying his name. She was shaken.
You think he was coming after me?
We can't say. What we do believe is that he's just killed 2 women in Portland.
Oh my God.
She had moved locations from the last time she had seen him, so he did not know where she was living at that time. She had met Mark Bebout at a bookstore.
He's very charming at first.
He treated me very special.
We met about 2 years ago.
Okay.
We moved in together really quickly. When it was good, but then it went bad.
He had quickly moved into her residence within several days, and that sounded very familiar to Michela's story. She said that immediately they started arguing, and they had 3 or 4 different domestic disputes.
He raped me. If my son hadn't walked in the door, I don't think he would have stopped.
She actually feared for her life. And at that point, she called the police, and she did get a restraining order against him.
I had him arrested, but I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't press charges. If I had followed through, those girls might still be alive.
She felt very, very guilty for not doing more. Amy had told me that her daughter had moved up to Seattle, and Mark actually knew that she was living there. She was afraid of him. She was scared for her kids.
Thank you.
I thought he went to Warrenton to locate Amy. And when he was unable to find her, I thought he was going to find a family member so he could hurt her. I believe Mark Bebout was traveling up to Seattle, and that concerned me.
So then we were on the trail again, waiting for him to mess up and alert us to where he was.
This is Detective Christina Coffey with the Portland Police Bureau. We have reason to believe that one of our fugitives is up there in Seattle.
So at that point, I contacted Seattle PD.
As soon as Detective Coffey approached our office with the idea that he may be in Seattle, the warrants were hand-carried through, applied for, and issued so that he would be held regardless of what he was stopped for in Seattle.
The next hit that we received was in Seattle, Washington, at a convenience store.
Our best tools into getting to that area immediately are using the U.S. Marshals.
Break the arrest! Stop, you're under arrest!
Bebout's taken down before anything happens to Amy's daughter or anyone else.
As soon as the handcuffs go on, you need detectives on a plane or in a car to get there as quick as they can.
We knew we needed to talk to him prior to him being booked into jail. That's when he would receive an attorney. It took us 3 hours to arrive at Seattle PD. We were able to have an interview with him that night. He told a lot of lies, so it was extremely frustrating listening to him. So we know it's going to take a while to actually break him. So eventually I just asked him, why didn't you tell us you were in Warrenton, Oregon? And he kind of stopped and he looked at me and he knew at that point that we had him with Michela Powell's ATM card, and eventually he told us the truth.
But once I grabbed her by the throat, I just couldn't stop.
He said that him and Michela were arguing in the early morning hours of July 4th, and he got mad.
I didn't strike her. I didn't call her out her name, anything like that.
He strangled her with his hands. He held his hands around her neck for several minutes.
Look at my hand. There was blood on my hands, and I'm like, how'd I get blood on my hands from her, from choking her? And
when he looked at his hands, he could see blood, and he didn't know what to do. And so he looked over the railing of the loft bed, and he saw his pretty white shoelaces hanging off of the railing.
And why were the shoelaces on the railing? To dry, hanging them up to dry. I've washed. They're white shoelaces. Okay. Grabbed one with one hand and I tied it around her throat.
So based on the facts of the case, I believe that Mark Bebout killed Michela Powell in the course of the sexual act.
Just knelt there, out of breath and sweating, and I thought, I gotta get the hell out of here, and I grabbed the dog and I just left.
Here's this girl who volunteers 20 to 30 hours a week at a homeless shelter. She's an innocent, pure soul who was here, truly helping people. You want people to be like Michela, kind, honest, decent person. When I look into Mark Bebout's eyes, I see a monster.
And after taking the lives of 2 innocent women, Bebout claims the only thing that kept him from taking his own life was Michela's dog.
Because I was thinking about what the hell was the dog gonna do.
Detective Dahl shares Bebout's murder confession of Michela with the mother of Myra Cruz. Now it's time to get justice for her daughter.
Mrs. Cruz, this is Detective Molly Dahl again. I have some good news for you.
Weeks later, a now bearded Mark Bebout is with his attorney. Investigators want Bebout to finally admit what he did to Myra Cruz.
She wasn't the sensitive Molly. She wasn't the compassionate Molly. She was now the Molly that was going to tell this murderer what she thought.
You don't seem to be comfortable being a sex offender. That's not a label you like. And yet, how many years have you been a sex offender?
8.
When you went to the park, did you think you were going to have sex with someone?
No. No, we were just spending the night and enjoying each other's company.
Let me go!
I didn't really think sex was going to be an issue.
Let me go!
Everything that came out of Bebout's mouth to me in our debrief was a lie.
Why her?
I don't know.
Did it have something to do with perhaps the sexual acts you had with her?
No.
No?
He deflected every question about him sexually assaulting Myra.
You did not kill them to cover up the rape of them.
That's correct.
But both of these females were found with your DNA inside of them, with their shirts on and their pants removed. But you didn't rape them.
That's correct. That happened to be a coincidence.
I believe that Myra ran away and she headed to downtown Portland. And when she got to downtown Portland, she was looking for transportation to California. I don't think that Myra was even in Portland for 24 hours before she bumped into Mark Bebout.
You look lost.
I'm just trying to get home. Do you know how to get a bus around here?
Sure. There's a bus station just a couple blocks away. Yep. but it can get a little rough getting there, if you know what I mean. I'm Mark, by the way.
Myra.
I could take you there if you'd like.
It's unthinkable that in a city of nearly 1 million people, that the one person that reaches out to help this sweet young girl is a psychopath. I knew that it was futile thinking that he was going to confess about, sexually assaulting a teenage girl in the woods. Your anger, your resentment towards this vile human, it stays under wraps. There's no sense in verbalizing what he already knows.
If you're able to look yourself in the mirror and acknowledge this story as being credible, I don't quite know how we're going to proceed.
But even without that last piece of the puzzle, the case proceeds. If Bebout pleads guilty to both murders, he'll go away for life, but won't have to admit to sexually assaulting either victim.
That bothered the investigators.
2 life sentences, no parole, no possible appeal. We lose the death penalty and the fact that he's a sex offender. We're coming out way ahead on this.
I'm certain the detectives may not have been happy with that as a final package, but the end result is he's doing consecutive life sentences.
I think that Mark Bebout sexually assaulted both Nikki and Myra. The premise upon their death was he sexually assaulted them. I don't think the sex crime should be stripped away from him.
This job is draining and exhausting. You miss, family events, you miss holidays, but seeing people like Mark Bebout behind bars is what makes you do it.
The actual first time that I saw Myra's mother was at the sentencing hearing. She came up to me and gave me a big hug, and she gave me a T-shirt that had Myra's picture on the front of it.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
It was a lovely moment to finally meet her, even though you can't fix that kind of grief in a parent. But I can patch it up a little bit. Some cases stay with you forever. This case in particular is etched onto my heart as a detective as well as a mother.